Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, do you remember any past lives? Well, if you don't, maybe you're just too old. Because there are a lot of youngsters out there, very little children, who fluidly can remember past lives. And many of us don't even know about that. And yet the world is filled with experiences of that. And there's an incredible book that I just finished reading that I was very excited about anyway, because it's called Children's Past Lives. And I'm so happy to have the author on our show today, Carol Bowman. Carol, welcome to Energy Stew.
Thanks, Peter. It's fun to be here.
Well, this is a very exciting subject matter, and I think probably to a lot of my audience, since they're used to me, and will appreciate all that you have to bring to the subject matter, because you're really an expert on hypnotic regression, on bringing people back into altered states, not only through hypnosis, but other ways of creating altered states in people who need to find out about the past. And so you've worked with people of all ages, all kinds of troubles, and helped them find answers through past life recognition. And I was thrilled about the whole idea of children's past lives and what that means, not only about them, but about all of us, about reality, about multidimensionality, about consciousness. And your book is so packed with beautiful experiences of so many people in ways that really open us up to appreciating life so much more. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah.
So where should we start?
Well, we could start with my children, which led me to this research more than 30 years ago. And I usually tell the story of my son because it's easier to tell than my daughter's story, and we don't have a lot of time. So,
and it's more action oriented.
Yeah, and there's more verifiable detail. When Chase was about 5, he became absolutely hysterical at a 4th of July fireworks display. And he was a very outgoing kid, very brave. And his reaction to the fireworks, he just started crying hysterically, was really out of character for him. In fact, his reaction was so extreme to the loud booming sounds that I had to take him home. And we were to rock him in a rocking chair until he settled down. And I thought, well, that was weird. You know, why he had seen fireworks before, why on this night had he had such a strong reaction?
And how old was he then?
5.
Okay.
So a few weeks later, we were in an indoor swimming pool for the first time. And when anyone went on the diving board, it made a big booming sound. Again, he became hysterical. He pulled me out of the building, and I was trying to figure out what in his short life could cause that kind of phobic reaction to that sound. And I had been a stay-at-home mother. I knew we hardly let them watch TV. I knew what Disney movies they had seen, and there was nothing that I could think of in his short life that could cause that. So as fate would have it, I had done a past life regression a year before because I had chronic lung problems. And that one session cured my chronic lung problems. In a 2-hour session, I went back, saw 2 lives, one in the 19th century where I died of consumption, and one in the 20th century where I died in a gas chamber during World War II. And my lungs cleared up. So my medical doctor was so amazed by my recovery that I invited this hypnotherapist back to my home in Asheville, North Carolina, where we were living at the time, to work with my friends. So Chase was about to start school as a almost 6-year-old. And I thought, oh no, if he's exposed to those sounds at school, he's going to become hysterical. So I asked Norman Ing, the hypnotherapist, if he could just give him a post-hypnotic suggestion so the next time he was around loud booming sounds, he wouldn't freak out. So little did I know that that moment would change my life. So he said to Chase, close your eyes, sit in your mom's lap and tell me what you see when you hear the loud sounds that frighten you. And all of a sudden he described himself. He said, I'm crouching behind a rock. I'm a soldier. I have a long gun with a sword at the end. There's smoke everywhere. I don't even know who I'm shooting at. And it's like, the hair on my arms started, everything started tingling, when you get, okay, I don't know what's going on, but this is.
And also he was very clear in his statements about it. It wasn't like he was imagining these things.
First person. He was speaking in the first person as someone who could have been there. And I didn't immediately jump to the conclusion that we were in a past life experience. It was more like, where did he see this before? Was it Mr. Rogers or Sesame Street or some Disney movie? I was trying to rationally figure out what was going on. But then as his recollection proceeded, he started talking about he was wounded in his right wrist, and they took him to a hospital, but it wasn't like a regular hospital. It was just this poles with something on top of the poles, and they put him on a bed, but it wasn't a real bed. It was a hard bench, and they wrapped his wrist and told him he had to go back into battle. He said, I don't want to go. I miss my wife and family. And that was the moment where I got goosebumps, and I still get goosebumps even repeating the story hundreds of times, because that's when I realized he was talking about past life. Like, this is nothing he was making up. So he said they make him go back to battle. He doesn't want to be there shooting others. He didn't even know why he was there. And next thing he knew, he was walking down a dusty road and he saw a cannon on a big wagon pulled by horses. And he said, they make me go behind the cannon. Next thing we knew, he said, I'm floating above the battlefield. I'm looking down. I'm glad to be out there. It's a relief.
Uh-huh.
So at that, he jumped off my lap and went out, walked out of the kitchen where we were sitting around the kitchen table, walked out of the kitchen, went to play with his Legos. And I was sitting there, what the?
Right, to him it was.
Holy smokes! My head
wasn't as amazing. It was just, he was just glad to talk about it.
Right, very matter of fact.
Right.
And
you talk about that in the book, about when children talk about past lives, because often it's spontaneous.
Right.
At his age, at 6, and you talk about that too, he's a little on the older side.
Right.
Of the real spontaneous memories that 2, 3, 4-year-olds can have.
Right.
And so that's why it was helpful to have him with a hypnotherapist. So
he didn't do any formal induction. He just said, close your eyes, tell us what you see, because it's very close to the surface in children.
Yeah, so, but he still needed that encouragement rather than
out
of the blue, because there are a lot of kids who start talking about past lives that you don't expect them to be saying anything, and all of a sudden they're giving you very clear data.
Right, and the upshot of that recollection was that his fear of loud noises went away.
Yeah, and not only that, his eczema.
And my daughter, who was 9 at the time, was sitting around the table with us when this happened, and she said, Mom, that's where Chase has had his eczema. And then, in the moment, I didn't put those two things together, but he had a chronic severe eczema on the spot where he said he had been shot in the wrist. Yeah. It had not responded to any kind of treatment, allopathic or so.
Waiting for this.
So the eczema cleared up within a couple of days, never to return until, and after I wrote my book and was on Oprah telling my story, when he was in college, he went to Temple University, which is local. He came home one weekend and he said, Mom, my eczema's back. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh crap, I told everyone in the book and on television, it went away. I said, well, what's been going on lately? And he said, oh, they wanted me to sign up for the draft to get my
Oh
student
my
loan.
gosh.
So just the thought of having to serve in the military produced this somatic, the body memory. And
Wow.
after that, it cleared up, and now he'll be 38 this month and has never recurred.
That's
So
incredible.
it is incredible. And he had a lot more detail after that first recollection until about the age of 7. And we figured out he had been a black soldier in the American Civil War,
Uh-huh.
which that was interesting in itself because I didn't know anything about the black soldiers at the time. You know, I had to do the research. But anyway, Chase's experience was because he had a guide, and Norman Ing, the hypnotherapist who was witness to this, helped him with, he said he didn't want to be there shooting other people. He felt bad about it. He just said, hey, we live different lifetimes on earth. We play different roles, and some are soldiers. We are soldiers and have to kill or be killed. There's no blame in it. And 5-year-old Chase got it on some level.
Right.
And I think it was the emotions that had kept the memory
Right. Guilt.
alive. Guilt, sadness about not seeing his family again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but that's going to be true in so many lifetimes that people have.
Exactly.
They feel incomplete because of
Right.
sudden deaths.
What we call unfinished business in the
Right.
trade.
Right. But
Yeah.
for people to then have past life regressions and understand that, and then see how likely they're finishing business in this life, is very helpful.
It's very healing. So anyway, that changed, that moment when Chase was 5 changed my life because I became curious. Do other children have these memories? And if so, could these be healing opportunities for other children as they bring in these issues from previous lives? So I started my research informally with, other mothers I knew in Asheville. And, did your kid ever say anything about past lives? And some of them had their own stories. They said, I never told anyone. And then I discovered there was someone at the University of Virginia Medical School, Ian Stevenson, who had been researching children's spontaneous past life memories for years, but mostly in Asia, where they're more likely to observe these memories and acknowledge them.
To be listened to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I started collecting cases, and I found through Ian Stevenson's research that what I found with my own children, my daughter had a phobia of fires, and she went through the same, tell me what you see when you have that fear. And her recollection was dying as a child in a house fire, and her phobia went away. So what I learned from Ian Stevenson is there are these patterns in the memories, in the spontaneous memories. Children will talk about them sometimes as soon as they learn how to talk or can communicate, or have phobias from birth. And a good percentage of these memories are of traumatic deaths. Children have positive memories too, but we're more likely to dismiss them as just, fantasy. They're just making this up. Oh, you had a farm when you were big before. Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, right. That's your imagination.
Yeah. And so, and Dr. Stevenson found that most of these memories that are troubling to children, they can carry over, as Chase did, this fear, sadness, guilt, first expressed itself as a phobia. These patterns can carry over emotionally. They can carry over physically. And usually by the age of 5 to 7, the memories fade. And, children will say, oh, I just dreamed that, or they don't remember it at all.
It's interesting how our minds change as we grow.
Yeah, we become acculturated. We're more obsessed or aware of the outside world. And the belief systems can really dampen any of this. Some children just know this is true, but they're afraid to talk about it.
And in your book, you talk about a number of doctors who have done research, and one of them, I think it was Stevenson, was really into detailed research.
Right.
And so his purpose was needing to prove to people
right.
that the recollections of these children actually are from a place in time that the children couldn't know about, and you can verify it all.
Right. And that's more common in cultures where they believe in reincarnation. The memories are more detailed. What I was finding with American cases, and since that time, more than 30 years ago, I've collected hundreds of cases of American children who have past life memories. They seldom remember proper names or places where they lived before, even though they have all the elements of past life memory. You know, they have behaviors relating to what they're talking about. They definitely have emotional carryover. They have phobias relating to the way they died. So it's very difficult to find good American cases. And I think there is a cultural difference in countries where they believe in reincarnation. I think the children, you know, there's this psychic energy that's set up where they're more forthcoming with their memories. Whereas I think Western parents have a tendency to draw back or not encourage the child to talk about it, or
You
just
talk about
dismiss
that a
that.
lot in your book.
Yeah. So what I found with my research, since I couldn't verify, I have some verified cases, which are pretty outstanding in American cases. But what I was finding generally, since my children had the healing benefit of going through the process of remembering, you know, their memories were coming up for a reason. Their soul needed to heal the trauma from the previous experience. I wanted to inform parents that these memories are real. It's a natural phenomenon. Even in cases where parents don't believe in reincarnation, it can still happen.
But see, it's very important that you see it as an important tool in life, that
Yeah.
we all really need to use our past lifetimes in many ways for healing and understanding our soul journey.
Absolutely.
And people who come from traumatic lifetimes that are here to resolve them are more likely to need it than others, of course. And not all children who remember past lives are remembering trauma.
Exactly.
And but it could be, you never know. Like I had an experience, fortunately, this summer. My 3.5-year-old granddaughter was visiting, and we were staying in a friend's house in the country that had a dressing room, a woman's dressing room with old-fashioned kind of mirror and thing. And my granddaughter sat down there and she said, "Oh, this is where my Grammy died." And I said, "No, your grandmothers are both alive. So this is where your Grammy died?" And she said, "Yes." And and she was remembering, I felt she was remembering a past life. So I asked her, and I said, "Oh, is this another lifetime?" She said, "Yes," very
Oh,
casually,
oh,
you
good.
know. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Do you remember your name in that lifetime?" She said, "My name was Manzine." And that was cool. And then that was enough. And I've tried to encourage her, but not blatantly, just hints about things. "Oh, tell me more about Manzine," but she's not that interested. So I guess what it is that it's not a traumatic experience that she needs to resolve. And one of the things I got out of your book is that how these young children are really in these worlds, multidimensional worlds, so casually and comfortably that they don't really take note of it. And even in your book, you talk about kids can agree that, "Oh yeah, we remember our past lives if it ever comes up in conversation, or that we've had other lifetimes, not necessarily remembering which ones, but that it's easier for children to appreciate that aspect of reality than they do once they get older."
Yeah, and when I usually do lectures, you know, I title the lectures "Children's Past Life Memories: Evidence for the Continuation of a Personal Consciousness."
Good.
And yeah, and I think that's the essence too. You know, consciousness is a continuum from death through rebirth, and these patterns show up even through the birth experience or early life, or a person's early life.
Yes.
So it's really about consciousness and what carries over too. And this is an incredible opportunity for children who are having spontaneous memories to let go of some of these negative feelings they've carried with them that they don't understand. They didn't have a chance to say goodbye to loved ones, or they died on a battlefield wondering what they were doing there or feeling guilty about it.
There's so many unresolved stories in people.
Exactly. And we all have them, or else we wouldn't be here.
Right. Yeah. Because we're here.
You know?
Right. Exactly.
So, but I want to comment on how you handled your granddaughter's recollection. And one of the reasons why I wrote the book too was, to say this is normal. These are the signs of a past life memory. Children talk about things they couldn't possibly know about. They have behaviors relating to what they're talking about. Just knowledge beyond their limited range of experience when they're talking specifically about, what it was like dying in the mud as a soldier and they were shot in the neck, and vividly describing.
Yeah, it might be a 3-year-old telling you that.
Yeah, exactly. Or two or 3 or 4-year-old. It's like,
right.
Okay, I better look that one up. But you handled it perfectly because you just want to be open to what they're saying. Use open-ended questions like, oh, do you remember more? Can you tell me more? Mm-hmm. Not pushing, not planting any ideas. That will encourage them to express more if they need to.
Right, I want her to feel that I'm somebody that she can be open with.
Exactly, and if there is more, she will probably be able to tell you as the recollections surface, and she, has greater vocabulary, or she gets triggered again. Whatever happened in that dressing room was the trigger for her to remember, just as in Chase's experience. The sound of the fireworks sounded like the cannon he was behind when he was killed in that battlefield. Right. So there are always triggers that can bring these memories forth in children. And what I found working with adults for more than 30 years doing past life therapy is that if these issues aren't resolved in childhood, there are ways we can work through them in real time now, but for the most part, they can persist.
And you have many examples in your book of so many stories of people and how they resolved issues that they couldn't resolve any other way.
Exactly, because if they're rooted in past life, that's the origin or the causative story. That's where it started. Right. So you could do 30 years of traditional talk therapy and never hit the cause or the reason why. Oh,
you have an elaborate story in your book about a woman who had this nightmare for 30 years.
Yeah.
And only through a regression found that it was related to a past life with a disappointed husband. And he was still haunting her.
Yeah, that was an unusual one, but in many cases, sometimes recurring dreams or nightmares that we've had since childhood are the past life material. It comes up through dreams too.
Right.
In children and adults. And
well, there's a story in your book of a woman who dreamt something she needed to know from a past life, but it was being projected to her from a fetus.
Yeah, I don't remember that story, but I'll take your.
No,
I don't remember all the cases.
Because it was a past life with this child who was about to be born.
Oh, yeah.
Sent a dream to her.
Right. Was that where they were Native American?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Anyway.
But I was fascinated that we can have these intuitive relationships with even an unborn child about past lives.
Right. And it was interesting because when my son Chase, even before that experience where he remembered, I remembered a lifetime that we shared. When he was 2, I had the dream and it was very vivid and it explained a lot about his behavior towards me. Uh-huh. And after having the dream and processing it myself, the behavior changed.
It's amazing how much can be understood through regression. And I'm so glad to be talking with you. We're getting near the end of the show. How can people find you?
Just Google me, Carol Bowman, Bowman, and I have the 2 books are still in print after more than, well, I think the first one's been out now for 25 years. And the second one is about reincarnation in the same family. It's called Return from Heaven. Just Google me and you can get them on Amazon.
Yeah.
And we could do a whole show on the second book on reincarnation within the same family of relatives or a child dying and coming back very quickly, so that the present family recognizes that, oh, this grandson is back. Or, oh,
Yeah, you have some stories of that in this book too.
yeah, and I go into it in depth in the second book because I think it's a miracle. And when you have a child who dies.
Knowing this work just keeps on coming up with new senses of miracles all the time.
I agree.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So I'm so excited about this. There must be something in me that is still coming through that excites me.
That's good.
Yeah. And,
it's so deep.
Right.
You know, you never get to the bottom of it because there's no bottom.
I want to know so many of my lifetimes. You know, I can do this intuitively for other people. I can see lifetimes, past lifetimes. But for myself, I'm too close to it and can't really do that. And so there's so much we're always learning about ourselves. And I want to thank you for being a real force in this journey of regression and multiple lifetimes. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And I enjoy it. You know, still after more than 30 years, I get excited every time I get a new child's case or every time I work with an adult.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah.
So thank you, Carol Bowman, for being a guest on Energy Stew.
Thank you, Peter.
And this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.fm. I can be reached at peter@heartriver, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for listening.